Hello everyone, welcome to EduRev. We will be doing practice questions on reading comprehension today. The passages are of LOD2 level, which means level of difficulty 2. I am hoping that you have gone through the concept videos of RC, understood all the concepts and taken notes, and only then you have come to this video to solve the questions. Let's start with the first passage. The murder of Fedime Sahandel, a young Kurdish woman in Swedish University of Uppsala, was no ordinary affair. Her father shot her dead in the head in front of her mother and younger sister for refusing an arranged marriage with a stranger from her Turkish homeland. So, as you know, we write one line summaries for the passages. So, here you can say that this paragraph gives me an overall idea about the arranged marriage. The killing of stunned Swedes. Thousands have joined torchlight vigils in her memory. Thousands more are expected to attend her funeral in Uppsala's Lutheran Cathedral. Miss Sahindal was an outspoken champion for second generation immigrants seeking her own way of life, often against their more tradition minded parents' wishes. Salin, Sweden's immigration minister, called her a fantastic role model for young women. So, this passage tells us about the role model. The murder has also touched a raw nerve in Sweden by questioning the country's ability to integrate its ethnic minorities. Issues such as forced or arranged marriages and the clash between Swedish values and those of immigrants have leaped up the politic agenda. The problem is not just Swedish. Denmark too worries about integration, and a row about arranged marriages is now blazing there. So basically, the third paragraph talks about the issues raised, right? Moving on, but the two governments have taken different approaches. First, Ms. Sahandel's death, Sweden's ruling Social Democrats said they would give more cash to crisis centers and support groups for young women seeking to avoid arranged marriages or to leave violent partners. They also said they would close a legal loophole that lets foreign girls as young as 15 to marry when 18 is the threshold for everyone else. The tone of Swedish ministers was one of sympathy for victims of forced marriages. So here we talk about the Swedish Swedish approach. Right. Moving on. Not so in Denmark. Foreigners, or at least immigrants, plus their descendants for a couple of generations make up about 7% of population. No vast figure, and foreign need not mean brown or black. But the new center right coalition was helped to power in November by a promise to curb immigration and at times will need votes in parliament from the overtly anti immigrant People's Party, which made large gains. The government has chosen to take action at the border. Till now, the foreign spouse of a Danish resident was entitled automatically to come in with a residence permit. But under proposals unveiled last month, this, with some exceptions, maybe would no longer be true, even for Danish citizens, if either person was aged less than 24, unless, of course, the incomer was a Dane or other EU citizen. Even for a couple both aged 24 or more, the permit would not be automatic cases would be decided individually. So basically, here we talk about what People's Party has to say or what are their decisions, right? The Danes are also making it harder for the foreigners to come to Denmark to join family members already there. The reason they say is that unemployment among young immigrants is already too high. Human rights campaigners suspect groupier motives to keep Denmark's proportion of brown and black residents below 10%. So, here we talk about the harder it is getting for foreigners to come to Denmark. Right. So now let's solve the questions related to our first passage. According to the passage, the murder of Sahandel reflects that A. Turks are generally orthodox. Kurdish are generally orthodox. Turks are supposed to arrange marriages. Kurds are supposed to arrange marriages. Kurds are unorthodox people. So, we have read it that her father shot her dead in front of her mother and younger sister for refusing an arranged marriage with a stranger from her Turkish homeland. Right. So, this shows that Kurdish are generally orthodox. Right. So, the correct answer is answer B. Moving on. According to the passage, the murder of Sahandel raises all of the following issues except arranged marriages, clash of Swedish and immigrant values, Sweden's ability to integrate its ethnic minority, Denmark's ability to integrate its ethnic minority, none of these. We also read about the issues. We have also given one line summary to it that the murder has also touched a raw nerve in Sweden by questioning the country's ability to integrate its ethnic minorities. Right? Issues such as forced or arranged marriages and clash between Swedish values. So, everything is here in the paragraph except the option D that Denmark's ability to integrate its ethnic minority is not given in the passage. The rest all are mentioned. So the correct answer is D, that is Denmark's ability to integrate its ethnic minority. Right. Question 3. According to the passage, a large number of Swedes joined torchlight vigils to express solidarity with the cause for which Sahandel was murdered, express resentment against the murder, show displeasure against the murder, console the family, and express solidarity with the family. So here we read it in the second line of the second paragraph that thousands have joined torchlight vigils in her memory, right? And they show strong support to her. So the option that they express resentment against the murder is correct. Question number 4. According to the passage, the Swedish government is planning to implement an exhaustive and extensive social reform program in Sweden, give cash rewards to young women seeking to avoid arranged marriages, punish Orthodox Kurdish population, implement policies to support victims of forced marriages, none of these. So, the answer is stated in the fourth paragraph of the passage in the lines, but the two governments have taken different approaches. After Miss Sahandel's death, Sweden's ruling Social Democrats said they would give more cash to crisis centers and support groups for young women seeking to avoid arranged marriages or to leave violent partners. So here the answer D, that implement policies to support victims of forced marriages, is correct. Right. So you can see every answer is given in the passage. You just have to look for it, and writing one line summaries are best to find the answers quickly. Let's move to the fifth question. According to the passage, all of the following are not true except Denmark and Sweden both are facing the problem of integration of ethnic minority. Denmark and Sweden are planning to work together to tackle the same problem. Denmark has refused to work together with Sweden. The problem of ethnic minority is not a big issue in Denmark. All of the above are not true. So the answer is stated in the last line of the third paragraph in the lines, the problem is not just Swedish. Denmark too worries about integration, and a row about arranged marriages is now blazing there. So the first option, that is Denmark and Sweden both are facing the problem of integration of ethnic minority, is correct. Question 6. The author of the passage could be a political scientist, a social scientist, an immigrant, a psychologist, or a politician. So here, by looking at the passage, we can say that the author is a political scientist, because political scientist is a person who deals with systems of government and the analysis of political activity and political behavior. So the author could be most probably a political scientist. Right. So here we are done with our first passage, and we will move on to our second passage. Passage 2. The year was 1965. I was Deputy Secretary, Budget and Planning in the Ministry of Defence. In 1963, a top secret committee headed by J.R.D. Tata had been appointed to review the decision to produce the Russians' MiG-21 aircraft in India. At that time, there were hopes that the US would agree to license their F-104 fighter aircraft for production in India. So, the first passage is about the author, and you can say the aircrafts for India. Right. Although these had been supplied to Pakistan, New Delhi and Washington had developed a military aid relationship after the Chinese attack in October 1962. So here we talk about the aid relationship. Moving on, the sum and substance of Tata Committee report was that India should opt for the US aircraft and scrap the MiG project. However, when Defense Minister Y.B. Chavan led a delegation into the US in May 1964 to sign a comprehensive aid agreement, it became clear that US would not release the F-105 aircraft for India. Instead, US offered the F-5 aircraft, which the US Air Force itself did not have in service. After his return from the US, Chavan went to Moscow in August 1964. At the end of the visit, Chavan not only reconfirmed the earlier MiG-21 production agreement, but also placed orders for 3 extra squadrons. Right. So here we talk about how in India we got F-5 aircraft and the production of MiG-21 in India. Right. In 1965, the Public Accounts Committee, under the chairmanship of R.R. Murarka, demanded to see Tata Committee report. As was to be expected, the Ministry of Defence took the stand that the top secret report could not be shared with the PAC. Since, as Deputy Secretary, I was the coordinator for dealings with the PAC at my level, the file came to me. I put forward a solution which earned me the distinction of being dubbed a maverick. Now, here we talk about in paragraph 4, about the solution which the author has given. Right. Moving on. I argued that while it may not be possible to share the top secret report with the entire PAC and allow it to be discussed, the PAC chairman's status was equivalent to that of a cabinet minister. One day he could become a union minister. Therefore, it would be quite in order for the defense minister to invite the PAC chairman to his office, give the report to him, get him to read it, and then discuss with him how he would like it to be handled. This suggestion of mine was forwarded to Chavan by the Joint Secretary, albeit with lot of reservations. So, here, what the actual suggestion, or you can say implementing the suggestion, was done. Implementing the suggestion. Okay, the defense minister accepted my suggestion. He invited Murarka to his room and gave him the slim Tata Committee report to read. Murarka read it and he did not press the matter any further. At that time, the Congress party had been in power continuously for 18 years and no opposition had ever tasted office at that center. So, here we talk about how the suggestion, or you can say what was done to that suggestion, or you can say how the suggestion was implemented. We just are talking about the suggestion. Some 37 years later, the situation is different. The opposition parties have also been at helm of the union government. The present chairman of PAC has had a long innings as a cabinet minister. Once again, the same kind of issue has arisen with the PAC asking for the CVC's top secret report on defense deals. Is Chavan's democratic norm still relevant? So, here we come to an end, and this paragraph is basically talking about what is the situation at present, or you can say present later. Situation later. Right. Now let's start with the questions related to the passage. According to the passage, Tata Committee was constituted to make a case for license production of F-101 fighter, to help the people in taking a decision about the production of MiG-21 in India, to suggest to the government how to review the proposed plan of production of MiG-21 in India. Now the options are 1 and 3 only, B 1 and 2 only, C 2 and 3 only, D all 3, E 1 only. Okay. So the answer can easily be inferred from the last two sentences of the first paragraph That is, in 1963, a top secret committee headed by J.R.D. Tata had been appointed to review the decision to produce Russian MiG-21 aircraft in India. At that time, there were hopes that the US would agree to license their F-104 fighter aircraft for production in India. So, the option is A, that is 1 and 2. Right. According to the passage, the author was of the opinion that the Tata Committee report was a top secret report and it was not in national interest to discuss it in PAC. The author was of the opinion that the Tata Committee report may be discussed with the PAC chairman in extraordinary circumstances. The author was of the opinion that it should be left on the wisdom of the PAC chairman how he would like it to be handled. Both B and C or all of A, B and C. So the answer is stated in the fourth and fifth paragraph. It is mentioned that when the PAC demanded to see the Tata Committee report, the Ministry of Defense was reluctant to share the report, right? It was then when a solution was put forward by the author to ease the tension. So, the author was of the opinion that Tata Committee report may be discussed with the PAC chairman in extraordinary circumstances. Right? Question number 9. It can be inferred from the passage that US was never interested in selling F-104 aircraft. US was never in agreement with India to supply F-104 aircraft. US breached the agreement with India. India breached the agreement with US. There was a mutual breach of agreement between India and US. So the answer is mentioned in the third paragraph that it became clear that US would not release the F-104 aircraft for India. So here US was never in agreement with India to supply 104 aircraft is the correct answer. I hope everyone is understanding how these answers are given in the passages. You just have to find the right passage, right line, and the answer will be there. Question number 10. It can be inferred from the passage that the author thinks that the CVC's top secret report should be discussed in PAC. The CVC's top secret report should not be discussed in PAC. There is a need for flexibility on the part of government while dealing with sensitive reports. Both A and C, and none of these can be inferred. So, it can be summarized from fourth and fifth paragraph that the author was in favor of some flexibility in rules while dealing with the sensitive reports. Okay, like you see, as was to be expected, the Ministry of Defense took the stand that the top secret report should not be shared with the PAC, and it would be quite an order for the Defense Minister to invite to his office, give him the report, read him, then discuss with him. Like you see here that he is talking about the flexibility. Question number 11. The attitude of the author towards the issue can be best described as anarchist, democratic, autocratic, extremist, illogical. Now here, by reading the whole passage, you can clearly see that the attitude of the author is democratic. The author is democrat. Right. So here we are done with our second passage. Let's read the third passage. Indian reality, Panikkar said, is fast changing for the worse. Referring to globalization and the growing power of transnational corporations, he said, an empire is forming before our eyes. He said that sections of society had come to accept the dominance of the market in social relations as an ideal, and that the situation is ripe for the making of an uncritical mind, a conformist mindset. Panikkar said that although the empire promised modernity and affluence, it actually promoted social obscurantism and cultural backwardness. Panikkar argued that the forces of communalism and empire complemented each other and had commonly shared interests. He said that the Indian government's reaction to Afghan war had clearly demonstrated the Indian ruling class uncritical acceptance of the dictates of the empire. So here the paragraph 1 is basically talking about the reality of India which the author is talking about. Moving on, Panikkar said that activists working to develop a counterculture had to realize that culture is an area in which social power is exercised. He emphasized that his action was not a cultural program, nor was it a performance or a spectacle based on various art forms. Only social activity on a continuous basis aimed at the radicalization of civil society could develop such a counterculture, in the process unsettling the existing equilibrium. He urged the people science movement to bring cultural action center stage. Now, basically, we talk about counter culture here. What it is basically happening. Moving on, Panikkar referred to three factors that impede progressive cultural action: the changing relationship between the individual and the outside world, the influence of market and the spirit of consumerism it enforces, and the rise of religiosity and communalism. These factors create a myopic vision that is insensitive to social reality. The rise of market results in the growing alienation of the individual from society. Consumerism as an ideology and the culture of the masses create a situation in which people's material aspirations are largely unrealistic. Panikkar argued that the anxieties generated by this contradiction formed the ground in which religiosity and communalism thrive. Panikkar suggested two areas for cultural action. In the creative realm, he suggested the use of art forms for cultural action. He referred to the Safdar Hashmi Memorial Trust SAHMAT effective campaign against communalism using paintings, music, street plays, and other methods. However, he said the drawback with this type of cultural action was that it was largely sporadic. So, in this paragraph, we basically talk about the cultural action, we talk about consumerism, and we talk about communalism. Cultural action, consumerism, and communalism. Panikkar suggested that the cultural action is a constructive realm would be more effective as they would be far more sustained. Action in the constructive realm would enable the formation of cultural communities. Such communities could be either imagined or local. Imagined communities are those that internalize common values and interests and their members relate to a common origin, he said. The intervention of Eklavya, a non governmental organization in the field of education in Madhya Pradesh, was an example of the development of such a community, he said. Local communities constitute the other type of contracultural action. They are local not because they address local issues but because they undertake actions on issues that are universally valid. Issues such as environmental degradation are prime areas that provide the basis for the development of such a community. Panikkar said such communities offered the possibility of continuous engagement, a necessary precondition for the creation of social consciousness. Panikkar said that cultural action was needed to de ideologize civil interest of globalization. De-idealize civil society from the influence of globalization and the logic of communalism. Referring to inherent contradiction between the interests of globalization and the ideology of cultural nationalism, Panikkar said that the contradiction offered local communities the space to initiate countercultural action. In developing such a culture, there was need to revitalize indigenous cultural resources while ensuring that they were not snared in obscurantism and revivalism, Panikkar added. So, here we can clearly say that we are talking about an example. We are talking about the imagined and local communities. So we talk about example, imagined and local community. Okay. Moving on to the questions. According to the passage, which of the following about local community is true? Environmental degradation is most important area that provides the basis for the development of local community. They might not address local issues. Local communities address only those issues that are universally valid. So the options are only option 3, only 2, 1, 2 and 3, only 1 and 1 and 2. So the answer is mentioned in the fourth paragraph in the lines. They are local not because they address local issues, but because they undertake action on issues that are universally valid. So the option is only 2, that they might not address local issues. It is clearly given in the passage. According to the passage, what made local communities an agent for starting countercultural action? Social consciousness that leads to the formation of such communities? Contradiction between the interest of globalization and the logic of communalism? Continuous engagement between the interest of globalization and logic of communalism? Cultural nationalism with a motive for initiating countercultural action? Mutual support between the interests of globalization and the logic of communalism. So, here it is mentioned in the last part of the passage in the lines that referring to the inherent contradiction between the interests of globalization and ideology of cultural nationalism, Panikkar said that the contradiction offered local communities the space to initiate counterculture action. So, the answer is B. Contradiction between the interest of globalization and the logic of communalism. Moving on, it can be inferred from the passage that influence of the market formed the ground in which religiosity and communalism thrive. Consumerism forces people to aspire for largely unrealistic material aspirations. Growing alienation of the individual from the society is generally preceded by consumerism. Both B and C, all of A, B, and C. So, the answer is mentioned in the later part of the third paragraph in the lines that consumerism as the ideology of the culture of the masses creates a situation in which people's material aspirations are largely unrealistic. So here consumerism forces people to aspire for largely unrealistic material aspirations is the correct answer. According to the passage, counterculture challenged the dominance of the empire, aimed at the radicalization of civil society, can be developed through continuous social activity, can be developed without unsettling of existing equilibrium, and is essential to maintain our cultural superiority. So, here you can see that the answer is mentioned in the second paragraph in the lines only social activity on a continuous basis aimed at the radicalization of civil society could develop such a counterculture in the process, unsettling the existing equilibrium. He urged the people science movement to bring cultural action center stage. So the answer is C, that the counterculture can be developed through continuous social activity. Right. So the last question is the tone of the passage can be best described as persuasive, highly critical, analytical, exploratory, or descriptive. Now, in the passage, you can see that the author is trying to prove something. That means the tone can be called argumentative, or here in the options, you can say it can be persuasive. Right. So now we are done with the practice questions. I hope you are thorough with these type of questions and good to go to the next level, that is LOD 3. Till then, you can go to our app or website for detailed notes, more videos and topic-wise tests to understand the topic in depth. You can unlock all the videos, documents and test of CAT with the EduRev Infinity plan to ace your exam at less than 80 rupees per month. So, thank you all. We'll see you in the next lecture.